If you can even believe it, this is Indy's nearly 3-month update. I just can't believe how big he's gotten. It's kind of insane. He's been absolutely incredible. I just don't even know how to explain it. So I guess I'll show you instead. Anyway, he's nearly conquered the blanket. He still gets a little bit nervous putting it on, but taking it off, he's pretty solid. The biggest issue is he doesn't really like it moving around on him because I think his brother pulls on it a lot and low-key kind of traumatizes him. But that's okay. It's been a little slow going, but he's pretty great. I start out every session with a goal in mind, and this one I really wanted to braid his mane. Just because it's due for some training, I usually keep it in braids just to get it on the right side, but I kind of been slack. Another goal I had for this session was to work on the clippers a little bit. We were doing it really frequently, but it's been a couple weeks since I've addressed it. And then lastly, I wanted to trim his bridle path, which is his least favorite part. So right now I'm just brushing his mane and his forelock and touching his ears. I think it's really important to touch him all over every session still, even though he's doing really well and he is handled every day. He had a second farrier appointment the other day and he was absolutely perfect. He stood like an old pro. He was actually better for them than he is for me on this day, which isn't really saying a lot because he's pretty great and so consistent. But he's a lot more still in the cross ties. I actually have to move him over because he prefers to hang to the right. But yeah, he is pretty great for his hind end. He's respectful. He doesn't yank him away. He doesn't kick. And with his fronts, he's just as good now that he's learned to balance himself. I'm still keeping my sessions really quick and short, just about 15 minutes each. And we just address a few things here and there and try to make a routine. And I always try to start off every session with a groom because it is really important for his ground manners overall. And we're really good at desensitizing here because we have Charles, my assistant. So thank you, Charles, for that. But truthfully, Indy couldn't care less. He is so chill and laid back. He gets a little bit nervous about things sometimes. Like he really doesn't like the spray on his body, which he's gotten a lot better at, but I don't know how much of that is because he has a winter coat and honestly can't really feel it. Either way, it's good practice. Every once in a while, I just am giving him like little itty bits of grain, like 2 or 3 little grains, just to keep him happy and interested and make sure he knows he's being a good boy. And I've said this in previous videos, I'm not a huge positive reinforcement trainer at this age because little colts are so likely to become mouthy, and mouthiness can turn into bitiness. And respect is very important to establish at this age so that they're not 2,000 pounds trying to bite you and kick you and strike at you, which is much harder to fix when they're that large. But yeah, here he is getting a little bit of those grains before I start braiding his mane. And this is a really good test of his patience. He is a patient guy because this took way too long and there was a lot going on. My dogs were playing in the background and my goats were yelling at me to feed them, and there was just a lot of chaos. And I only braided about half of his mane because that was the part that was acting crazy. But he was so good, he hardly moved at all. And now I'm introducing the clippers. Since he has already seen the clippers, I do not have a problem with showing them to him on the cross ties. He should be pretty okay with it by now. We've done it in probably 4 or 5 sessions. But when I do the clippers, I always start with rubbing them all over his body on both sides, and then I turn them on and I leave them on just on the floor so he hears the sound. So that sound is a little crazy and I don't blame them for not liking it. And then I distract him with something entirely different, which is trimming his bridle path, and he hates it. He doesn't like the combination of me having both of my hands up there and the sound of the scissors. So what I do is I'm holding on to a chunk of his mane up by his ear, and then I'm just snipping the scissors above his ears so he acclimates to the sound. When he stops moving, he's a good boy, so I stop making the sound, and then I just snip off a little bit of his mane, which he does not like, and then likes it even less when I snip it above his ears. So when he moves around a lot, I stop trimming his hair and I go back and snip it above his ears until he stops. I don't know if that made any sense at all, but that is what I do. And it works. He stops long enough to let me trim it, and then I leave him alone after he stops moving. I don't do this as often as I should, considering he is kind of annoying about it. But I also don't want to be trimming his bridle path every single day. I just don't think it's necessary. So then, since I finished with the bridle path and he's still kind of annoying about it, I'm going in by his legs because that's another sensitive area. And once he stops moving, he kind of figures out that, oh, it's not a big deal. And then he gets a little treat. And again, this is something that I have done with him before multiple times, so I know how he's going to react if it were a new horse that I don't normally work with, or a situation that I was newly presenting him to, I would have him on just his lead rope because I don't want to give him any bad habits like pulling back or anything. I don't really care that he wiggles around on the cross ties like I've said in previous videos. That's something that we can address later. I want him to not be able to go far, but that he knows he's not trapped, that he can move away a little bit if he needs to. And since you've seen the clippers before, again, we're showing him the clippers now that they're on. And obviously he's a little apprehensive, but he overall isn't gonna freak out about it. And I'm showing him the clippers on for a really short time, just enough to know that it's not a big deal. So that way when they're presented next time, he knows, and then he's not worried about it. And this little homie would do anything for a treat, so I think he just wants a cookie. And now that the session's about over, I'm just gonna throw his blanket back on because that's what he doesn't like, and he's getting a lot more confident about it. As you can see, he approaches the scary stimulus. He knows he gets a little cookie if he does that. And I've been less careful about it now. We're throwing it over his back and trying to get him acclimated to the movement and the sounds that it makes. Whereas in previous sessions, we probably would have just pushed it on his shoulder, thrown it over his back gently, and then pulled it into position. And when that wasn't such a big deal, we started to just kind of throw it over his back like we would put on any horse's blanket normally. And he's gotten really good at it now, as you can see. And then I take him for a short walk and we do some stopping, some rubbing the rope on him, some throwing the rope over his neck and his back, his legs, and he is fine. And this was a pretty big session for him. Normally I don't do quite this many things in one session, but there are a few things I needed to accomplish, and I had a lot of time today. And clearly he handled it really well. I just don't ever want him to feel overwhelmed by the amount of information, so we kept it really easy and did a bunch of familiar tasks. Thanks for watching. Bye!